push. Okay, welcome everybody to the 9th panel of this conference, and it's going to be the last panel, and the panel is on forgotten performances, the Balkans and the Caribbean in focus. We have 4 very interesting speakers who will be discussing their topics on 4 different countries. We're going to start first with Dr. Gordan Akrap, Vice Rector of Dr. Franjo Tuđman Defense and Security University, Zagreb, Croatia, and founder and president of Hybrid Warfare Research Institute, also in Croatia. Gordan will be speaking on how Croatia won the homeland war, organization and transformation of armed forces and intelligence community. A fascinating topic with various themes. Sadly, you only have 15 minutes for that. I'll remind you 5 minutes in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Shukra to all of you, and especially to Dr. Omar Rashul, that he is our host here today, and thank you for Doha Institute and Strategic Studies Unit for this excellent conference. Can you hear me?
No.
But it's turned on.
No.
Okay, I will come closer. So it's my privilege to speak about it, how to do it, and how we won the war, and how we integrated our defense and intelligence capabilities in a driving force. When we took the control of the power of the responsibility for the Republic of Croatia after the elections of 1990, when we tried to switch, and we switched it, and we changed the system of the Communist Party, Communist ruling party system, and Communist government to a multi-party democratic system. We can compare the facts according to the Diamint principle, which kind of power that the new government of Croatia had in its position. And then you will see how it was very hard for us to maintain the defense and intelligence capacities in order to the conflicts and wars that we were faced with. So Diamint is diplomacy, information, military, and economy. Diplomacy, we have 0. All diplomacy was under the Yugoslavian Federal Authority. Informational, it means information and communication was also 0, maybe negative, because only 2 to 3 media were free, non-communist party influenced in that former in former Croatia, socialist Croatia, but in Yugoslavia was even worse. Military was 0. Republics were not allowed to have a military components. Republics were not allowed to have any military formations. We were able to have a territorial defense, but before the results of the elections, multi-party elections in 1990, Yugoslav People's Army decided to remove all the weapons from the storages that were kept for the territorial defense of Croatia, and they were transferred to the warehouses under the control of Yugoslav People's Army. So we did not have any weapons. Economy was under the influence also of the Communist Party system and their organization, so economy also was very weak. By rising the conflicts and war, later the companies lost the market and their value also decreased. So we were not in equal position, we were very, very lower position than Yugoslavian army and Serbian with this. Just to show you something, what was the else that we were faced with. This is the percentage of the officer cadre in the former Yugoslavian army. You can see the huge differences between the population number in census and the number of the officers in the Yugoslav People's Army. Around 12% of the Croats that were officers in Yugoslav People's Army means that there was around 3,000 of Croats that were part of this army. 1,800 of them left the Yugoslav People's Army from mid-1990 up to the 1992. 1,500 joined the Croatian army. 10% of them were non-Croats. Kosovo Albanians, even Ukrainians, Macedonians, and the others. So this was a driving force that helped us to create the defense forces. Then the only power, repressive power that the new Croatian government had in this position was the State Security Service that was part of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. As you can see, there was almost 80% of Croats in the Republic of Croatia at that time, and they were 51% of the Croats within the employees of the State Security Service. State Security Service had around 900 people, 900 employees. And from the beginning of the multi-party system and after the transition to the new government, around 160 to 170 people left the intelligence immediately, the counterintelligence agency, and they joined the rebels, Serbian rebels and terrorists. So it was a first significant degree. Then in the next 2 years, we arrested around 50 to 60 members of the state security service that remained to work within our system as a Serbian spies. So it was a very, very significant challenge for all of us. Other thing is that President Tudjman, when he became a president, we already faced two different and very significant strategies that were enforced. First one is a strategy, grand strategy of Yugoslav People's Army and Federal Communist Party to remain Yugoslavia as it is, including Slovenia together. The second strategy was to create a greater Serbia. It was a strategy of the Serbian nationalists and Serbian leaders. So we can get rid of the Slovenes because we don't need them, and we can leave the only part of the Croatia to leave that greater Serbia, but we will fight to the borders of Karlobag, Karlovac, Virovitica. And it was a very significant thing that we have to face. So dime power, Croatia did not have anything. Dime, on the other side, it was full capacity. So what we were faced with, we can imagine that, and we can describe the situation that we were facing the strategic chessboard game on the four different chessboard plates that were interconnected within each other. First one was a kinetic chessboard that we tried to postpone as much as it was possible to do it, because we tried to develop our defense forces as long as we should have the time in front of us. Second one was a diplomacy, to build up diplomacy network. Thanks to the few of the cadres that left the federal diplomacy and joined our diplomacy, and with the huge help of our diaspora. Second one, internal cohesion. Without internal unity, without integration of whole of the society efforts, how we call it now, nobody can win anymore, any conflict anymore. And the fourth one was influence operations. We have to find in the information domain. As you can see it here, this is something that we call it hybrid warfare today. And we were faced it from the beginning of our activities. Second thing is, President Tudjman decided to define 3 strategic goals. You can see it in multiple years that were in front of us. First is internationalizing the Croatian defense activities. So internationalization means achieving international recognition of the Republic of Croatia. Second one is build up the defense forces that were able to keep and preserve as much as land of our Croatia that we can defend, then to build up the offensive forces in order to be able to liberate the forces and integrate all the occupied forces. And the third one that came later, to stop the conflicts and war within the Bosnia and Herzegovina, to keep Bosnia and Herzegovina united, and to not to allow the Serbs to go across the Drina River, and to stabilize the Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to protect the members of international forces that were in the Croatia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, President decided that we have to have 3 principles for decision-making process. First one is, as you can see, the role of continuous interactions and open communication. That means harmonizing policy with international standards, identifying and finding partners. With open communications, we wanted to maintain the partnerships. We didn't have any allies. We didn't have friends. We tried to have partners. It was very tough, because at that time we were without army, we were without weapons. We know that war is going on, and the weapons that we acquired was on a black market, and the operations that we conducted against the military Yugoslavian People's Army when we, somewhere in the September, October, and November 91, when we attacked the military barracks and we seized lots of weapons. Second one is strategic problem solving. Try to identify and prioritize your challenges. Don't waste your time on tactical and operations. Choose strategy. Without that, you can't do anything. You can win battle, but you will lose the war. The rule of neutralizing the enemy with isolation. What we did, we achieved it. We tried it, we did it. We isolate our enemy with political, military, economy, and primarily on international level. Isolated enemy is neutralized, more or less. Well, crucial support in these activities was strategic intelligence. Try to imagine a situation for our friends in Ukraine now that from the 2014 they are able to have a phone surveillance of the President Putin communications. We did it. From 1990, from the end of 1990 up to the 2000, we were able to have a full control, almost full control of the phone communications of the Serbian President Milosevic. It was a real strategic intelligence. And Serbian President was not aware of that fact, and it helped us a huge decision-making process for us to win the battles. SIGINT, HUMINT, and other way of the intelligence by the develop the analytical abilities helped us to do it. Many people, many persons were not, didn't knew it before it was published in 2000 or something, but what we did in those 2 years, I said in 2 years, we developed armed forces. How we did it? As I said, we built the armed forces firstly in a defense form. What we did, it was forbidden to have armed forces as a part of the Ministry of Defense. 5, okay, I will try to gush. So we have a paramilitary units, civilians, and we have special ops forces within the police and reserve police officers. And then we build them up, and we build up the guard brigades that become a part of the Croatian army in 1991. And then we were able to train, educate, equip, and motivate our people, our soldiers, to do whatever it was necessary to be done. Then we created friends and partners. We didn't have an ally. Now, when we are in NATO, we have an allies. So that's what we did when we prioritized. This is the way, for example, how we change ourselves. So you can see the difference of the insignia. From the beginning, how weak they were not qualified, but at the end, it was much more qualified and much better quality. One of the most important things that we were faced with is the change of the mentality. From the communist system up to the new democratical system, new elections. And therefore, we transfer the intelligence community, and we build it up and then to the new principles according to the activities and the rules that exist in a modern and today's Western world. So we choose to acquire quite a lot of youngsters based on those few principles. They have to be part of the homeland war activities, they have to be educated, they have to know the foreign languages, and that they have to have a clear sense of patriotism. So this is a basically intelligence community of Croatia organigram in the 1991 and 1992. As you can see it here, for example, this SUSUP, it's a first state security service, and this was the main driving force for defend the country. But then in 1993, we developed the the intelligence community that were capable to take active control of the activities. In 1993, we reached position that we get information superiority against our enemies. And we reached the position that we can control the trends, that we can make the trends, we can control and make the narratives in order that Serbs are going to be in a position that they have follow our story. They have to follow our trends. As you can see here on the HIS, it was a foreign intelligence agency. I was a director of operations at that time for the foreign intelligence agency, and I was a chief coordinator of intelligence community at that time. So most of those things that I'm talking to you now are the personal experiences. Just to show you example how excellent contribution and cooperation between intelligence and military is. Military without intelligence is a blind and deaf, especially if it's strategically important intelligence. You can see this is the east part of the Croatia, so-called Krajina, that was occupied by the Serbian Yugoslavian rebels. It's 10.4 thousand kilometers. It's just around the area of the Kosovo today. We liberated in 4 days. 10,000 square kilometers. We lost 200 people, Serbs lost around 500 people. There was 260,000 soldiers there, but we managed to avoid victims, we managed to avoid destructions, because we reached the strategic surprise against our enemy, we reached the information superiority against our enemy, and we knew the way how they wanted to supply their forces with additional forces from the Serbs from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from the Serbia, and we opened them in order to be closed. I can describe you later, I don't have so much time. But we controlled the area, we control the time, we control the information narrative, we control the processes. The best and most important battle that never happened was under the name Chariots of Fire. In intelligence community, it had a code name Epilogue. It means the end. When President decided that we are not going to use military force to liberate occupied Croatian Danube area, he gave the order to the intelligence and the foreign affairs. Using the open and shadow diplomacy, forced the Serbs to accept peaceful negotiations. We did it. We did it. It was a strategic decision. We won the battle without firing any bullet. That means looking as a strategic position for the future. The United States authors described this in this book, and they wrote that Tudjman, that he is a master of the game. And instead of the conclusions, I wrote a few things. But there are a few things that I would like to mention. Our war, we learned that nobody can win in any conflict, any war, anymore alone. If you are not able to have allies, you have to have partners, you have to have friends, especially in international domain. Second thing is that on 28th of October 95, we were forced to stop our military operations in Bosnia and Herzegovina. President Tudjman called and said, you have to stop the operations, that's the order. Because he was called by the US President Clinton. He said, well, Mr. Tudjman, if you are going to enter to Banja Luka, and we were 17 kilometers southern from the city of Banja Luka, that is the capital of the Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we can reach it in 2 days because it was almost open. We know that we have to avoid city battles, but we could do it without any significant casualties. And in 7 days, we will reach the border between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia on the Drina River. But Americans were afraid that this might overturn President Milosevic for the power. That move prohibited us to defeat completely the Serbian grand strategy. And therefore, because we were not able to defeat this strategy, 30 years after this battle, we are still facing these negative consequences of this strategy in Kosovo, in Montenegro, in Northern Macedonia. So if we are not going to be able to defeat Putin's Russia grand strategy, it will remain, it will reappear again 3 to 5, 10 years. So this is most important thing, lessons learned that we have to learn from our lessons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akrap. Next speaker is Dr. Zoran Ivanov. He'll be speaking on small state internal defense and intelligence resilience, how North Macedonia avoided a civil war. Dr. Ivanov is Distinguished Assistant Professor at Top University of Economics and Technology in Turkey and a Senior Advisor at Rink Institute in Slovenia. You have 15 minutes.
Okay, how do I do this? Just right. Okay, thanks. It was February 2001, and I was the on duty in the Special Forces Operations Center, and I got a phone call that one of the journalists was kidnapped at the village of Tanushevci near the border. So I was a young lieutenant at that time, and I had to make a decision. So they sent me. They said, you just go there and see what's going on and take all the necessary measures, whatever that means in that time. So that was the order that I got. So I have to face several decisions. And the one that I make, I think I will make the same thing again today. Why? Because we didn't overreact, we didn't fall for whatever that event was made for us as security forces. So today I will talk about the 2001 conflict that happened in Macedonia. My name is Zoran Ivanov, and I'm coming from Skopje, Macedonia. I'm teaching at Ankara University right now, top university in Ankara. And I have over 25 years of experience So this is me, by the way, on the picture. If you can see me, that's nice. If you don't, that's fine too. So this is how I started, basically, from Special Forces commander. Then I move up through the chain. Then I become the military chief of intelligence. Then I become the director of intelligence. Then work with the president and passing all these levels in a very hard way. But that also gave me a great experience, so I can understand from this standpoint everything what's happened in the history. On the map you can see where the conflict took place is mostly on the northern border, and we tried to isolate it, and actually we did, so we didn't allow to go to the civil war. So how do we get here? So this conflict in Macedonia was just a continuation of the series of conflicts in the Balkans. The colleague before, he said that if they stop the war in Croatia, right, so if they defeat the Serbians, this all can take different routes. I agree with this, because Macedonian conflict is kind of continuation of the last, with the conflict which was Kosovo War. That's bring me to the next point, that we didn't have a direct experience like Croatia and Bosnia, they fought, so we have insurgency within the country, and we're talking about 2009, like well 10, 11 years after the major conflict. To us, this was very surprise, because we didn't expect this, because we're thinking that when we help Albanians, Albanian people, they came from Kosovo during the border, so we facilitated over 300,000 refugees. So we did everything what we can to those people, and later on, regardless of the conflict, right? So we were between the first one who recognized the Kosovo independence, and we still vouch for our neighbors, which we have lots of good friends there. So this insurgency is coming from outside, and according to the school of thought about counterinsurgency and insurgency, says the most difficult insurgency that one country can face if that insurgency have a support from neighboring countries. So this is what's happening. The insurgents from Macedonia, so they find safe havens and cooperation within the Kosovo in that time. So our security forces were fighting many battlegrounds. First is with ourselves. We were not prepared. There was only one unit that was prepared. It was the Special Forces unit. Why? Because we did have some basic, in that time, counterinsurgency training and unconventional warfare knowledge. So we were basically the only one who takes the fight. And during the first conflict, as you can see from the first slide, so my team was there. Actually, my team got, it was in December, so they got blown up, our vehicles, and then we just continue through these security issues, and then we were the first one actually went to this village. Then we opened basically from February, so we opened all the military operations directly with the insurgents. But the only thing was our military and police, we have zero coordination, zero unity and effort in that time, and also zero unity of command. So we're trying every unit for themselves. And then luckily, so that was a good thing, so we put lots of pressures with some people that we have understanding what's going on. So we have lots of pressure on what's happening. So slowly enough, by foot, by how we fought, so we try to learn to adjust our operations as we go. We were fighting in dark. We were missing intelligence. There were security intelligence in that time, too, military and the civilian one, and they didn't talk between each other. It was very stovepipe mentality for that time, like 25 years ago, and it was very difficult to compare some informations. The Special Forces unit in that time, it was under the Military Intelligence Service, and we, just myself and few colleagues, so we have directly involved in the intelligence collections and operations, and also the planning. And we have seen those reports, but we didn't see any of the reports from the other agency. So there was kind of big misunderstanding between who is our actual enemy, who we are fighting, right? So that's kind of big thing that it happens. Honestly, until the end of the conflict, which is the August 2001, for a few months, this was the biggest issue. I will give you one example. We got one report, it says, I don't know what the agency, I don't remember, but it says that 50,000 insurgents were about to enter from Kosovo to Macedonia. And now we all know, if you do military operations, so you know how much footprint that 50,000 soldiers can leave, and that's kind of not easy, not hard target to see even from high in the sky, right? So that was like a false information that we also have to go. But the good thing is that our unit was trying, and my colleagues were trying to confirm all this intelligence that we have. As a country, we didn't have counterinsurgency doctrine. That was it. It's simple. So we fought conventionally. On the other side, that was the second weakness. That was the first one. The second weakness was most of the high-ranking officers, the military leadership, they were coming from the former Yugoslav army, JNA, it's called JNA, the Yugoslav People's Army, and their doctrine was all conventional. There were some individuals who understand what does it mean insurgency and how to fight unconventional, but most of the decision makers, and we're talking about the selected people, so they have this mentality of conventional forces. And that's why if you just do the simple search of the media, you can see that some of those military officers, they were on the TV, they were showing the maps, so how they're doing these operations within the counterinsurgency setup. So that's also a third weakness, that we also give the false signals to the international community what we are doing, right? Because we're supposed to fight urban warfare, right? And we didn't get it right. So you don't fight urban warfare with tanks, which is mean another failure. So we have like failure after failure after failure. So we could not face the real enemy. And we cannot have this decisive victory as we already pre-planned and pre-achieved. Regardless, there was like colleagues in the army that they also knew what they were doing, so we knew how we can proceed. But there are many orders given, so we should not proceed. So we should balance the security and stability. So it was not about winning the insurgency, about preventing the civil war. Why? Because as soon as the first civilian casualties came, and there was a group of people that were kidnapped by the insurgents, so now the whole country went to the protest. It was a big issue suddenly, within 2 months. So now we have this animosity immediately, and these ethnic tensions were super high. So we have to think how we should adjust ourselves and not to turn this into the civil war. We lost the initiative. How? The president, Boris Trajkovski, in that time, he said we're fighting terrorists, not rebels, and we have exercising the utmost restraint to tackle them. That was very correct. But what's happened? It's happened that we also got the support from international community and our strategic partners, including the US, so that they said, yes, these are the terrorists, because most of the intelligence that we gather as long as we fought, so we found that most of them, they're involved in criminal activities, which was also, we have some communication with the KFOR forces. They also were looking for the same people. So which is mean we're fighting terrorists and criminals in that time. So they give us a space. We lost it. We didn't use it. And that's why suddenly, when we're guns not enough, right? So we have to accept the pressure from the international community. And that pressure was the Ohrid Framework Agreement. But this Ohrid Framework Agreement has a cost. There is a totally different subject, and I will stop just at the Ohrid Framework Agreement because, as the conclusion that was not balanced agreement and this not satisfied both sides. So there was a higher price we have to pay as a state in order to have this agreement. But it get the job done. It prevented the war. Yes. What we can learn as a small state. First, as intelligence. We have to develop intelligence, regardless how small, big we are. Without clear picture, without clear understanding of the operational environment, we cannot do anything. We cannot even choose the right partners, choose the right alliance. So we have to understand the operational environment. We have to understand the players, the conditions, and interactions within that operational environment. Adaptability, we have to adjust. Yes, we did adjust. And we learned on foot how to be adjusted. And soon after, in 2003, we immediately sent forces to Afghanistan, then to Iraq. So we just pile our education in the army. So now our army is well prepared and experienced in combat, because we also took in Iraq and Afghanistan, so we took direct combat actions. We're not staff officers. We were fighting there. So we gathered this knowledge and experience. So there's adaptability is number one. And the last one, and I will conclude with this one, is diplomacy. So we have to develop, as a small state, we have to develop strong diplomacy, unconventional diplomacy that is super adjustable to the high dynamics of the major power shifts and the complicated issues that we're facing today. So this is us somewhere in mountains of Macedonia in north, and we're just thinking what we just did. And my biggest conclusion is that how we can prevent the next war before it started. And I'm just looking at the operational environment right now. So we have in the past, like 5 decades, we passed lots of conflicts. We have lots of very bad experience and wars. And I believe that we didn't learn any of these lessons. That's why we have Ukraine suffering right now. And slava to the heroes. So I fought with those people. I know them very well. And we shouldn't allow this. So that's my next message. Prevent the next war before it started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ivanov. I'm happy with colleagues keeping time. It's almost military precision here. Our third speaker is Dr. Ramadan Ilazi, and he's head of research at the Kosovar Center for Security Studies in Kosovo, and the team leader in the framework for the Horizon Europe-funded SMICH project, which investigates the rise of extremist narratives among middle-aged individuals in Europe. And he'll be speaking on post-conflict military building process in the Western Balkans, a comparative analysis of the armed forces of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republic of Kosovo. You've got 15 minutes too. Thank you.
Two minutes. No, yeah. I'll probably be able to finish. Let's see. All right. Thank you so much, Atam. And I want to thank Dr. Ashur and Doha Institute for the kind invitation to speak at this conference. First time for me in Qatar, and you have a lovely country, and I look forward to other opportunities to visit. I think it's only prudent that we are the last panel of a panel named Forgotten Performances. I hope our performances in this panel will not be forgotten. My focus will be looking at Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina and how basically the process of these two countries building their armed forces, but focusing in the DDR process. So how that demobilization and reintegration in society happened. Let me also put my timer, so hopefully Atam doesn't have to work a lot. Just for any colleague in the audience, for a larger perspective, this is when we say Western Balkans, it's a political terminology. I think made in EU to kind of make our region more positively perceived within some capitals of the EU. But we are talking about 6 countries, 3 of which are NATO members. So we're talking Albania, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. 2 others want to join. This is Bosnia and Kosovo. And another is at least formally declared as military neutrality. This is Serbia. 5 of these 6 are candidate countries. Kosovo is a potential candidate. Kosovo has a particular challenge of overcoming in this process, which is that 5 EU member states don't recognize its independence. When we look at the whole region, it's about 17 million people, so not a large region. Our average GDP per capita is $10,000. This is like when you look at Qatar, I think it was $80,000 per capita. So it is growing. Another way to look at our region, and this is not some kind of research-based separation, this is me providing some context, is these 6 countries, 4 you can look at them as nation states, I guess, ethnic states. And the other 2, Bosnia and Kosovo, are states that were created in a way as an aftermath of a brutal war. And these were designed, as you can see also from their flags, to be very neutral, to be multi-ethnic states. So even, for instance, national anthems of both countries do not have any words. It's just plain music, in a way not to be offensive. In terms of composition, though, this is not a reflection of composition. Each of these countries, Zoran was talking about Macedonia, where Albanian community, for instance, comprises, I think the last data shows 25% of the population. But the point is, formally, officially, these other 4 states are more, I think, would be akin to a nation state. Now, if you want to learn more about what happened in our region, instead of listening to us, BBC, I am sure many of you know this, did a fantastic miniseries on the death of Yugoslavia. It is brilliant research, and it really helps you create an understanding why everything that happened. And I think it is very neutral in a way and devout of emotional presentations of why something happened. So I won't go there very far. Now, on Bosnia, so what I will try to do is bring Bosnia and Kosovo through different slides and then try to take comparative analysis. Bosnia was the most ethnically mixed republic in Yugoslavia. It was supposed to be, in a way, the capital of this federation. Sarajevo was the most mixed city. The 3 primary groups comprising this country are Bosniaks, the Muslims, Serbs, Orthodox Christians, and Croats. In 2013 census, the population showed to be 3.7 million. Today, some estimates put it at 3 million. Bosniaks comprising 50%, Serbs 30%, and Croats 15%. Now, there hasn't been a new census as far as I know, and this is in itself a very problematic issue. How did it happen? The whole process, I guess, just the key facts. March 92, there was a referendum. Bosnia declares independence. Serbs reject and declare an area to be Republika Srpska, so another, in a way, country. This leads to Bosnian war, roughly between 92 to 95. Who is fighting? Army of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatian Defense Council on one side, although there were periods when these 2 were also fighting each other. And on the other side, you had Army of Republika Srpska. Army of combined forces of Croatian Council and Army of Bosnia and Herzegovina was around 264,000 based on some data, while the Serb army was about 154,000. Now, estimate killings range from 100,000 to 200,000. Yesterday, there was some discussion about the numbers of civilians killed, and this is majority of these people are civilians. For instance, when you look at the worst, and of course the worst mass killing after World War II in Europe itself happened in the genocide of Srebrenica when 80,000 people were killed. So there hasn't been an event like that yet, although perhaps I guess with everything that's happening in Europe, it's too early to say. 11th of July is now commemorated as the International Day of reflection and commemoration of the genocide in Srebrenica. Mary Kaldor, a very prominent scholar, because of the, came up, looking at the war in Bosnia, came up with this new concept of new wars. So away from civil war and conventional war, the new wars, the brutality, the sheer brutality of the Bosnian war. On Kosovo, we had our, Kosovo is more homogeneous when you look from the ethnic perspective. In 1981 census, this was done during Yugoslavian time, 77% were Albanian, about 15% Serb and other communities. Now, most recent census we had last year, we have 90% of Albanian, 4% belonging Serbs, but this number should be taken with, I think, some reservations, since some Serbs in Kosovo did not participate in the census, and there is a number of them who were displaced after 99 and are living in Serbia, as from, you can clearly, I guess, deduce from the comparison of the two censuses. In Kosovo, the key trigger to the conflict was when its status as an autonomy province was revoked in 1989. We reacted with a constitutional statement initially. Our first idea was we want to be a republic within Yugoslavia. So we didn't, our immediate reaction was, no, we want independence. But then that kind of like led to nowhere. And so in September 91, we also had a referendum, illegal referendum from the perspective of Serbian government. But this is when the independence option was chosen. During the 90s, Kosovo formed parallel institutions to operate as, or act as a state, although it didn't have any kind of resemblance of any kind of a state, but this process created a leadership for the country. Kosovo War between largely 97, this is when the Kosovo Liberation Army made the first public appearance. We had about, from the Kosovo War, about 14,000 people killed. Among these were 10,800 Albanians and around 2,000 Serbs. If you want to know more about this 90s period, which is very interesting, Howard Clark has a very good book from anthropological perspective on civil resistance in Kosovo. So this was the main fighting force in Kosovo, the Kosovo Liberation Army. Now, unlike Bosnia, where the political leadership took the fight, led the war, in Kosovo, Kosovo Liberation Army represented a new elite. These were people who didn't think that the peaceful or resistance was leading to any solution. So they took up arms. Different estimates, but some registrations put the number of combatants at 25,000 soldiers from the Calais. Now, as I said, Kosovo is homogeneous ethnically, but within Albanian community, you have Albanian Muslims and Albanian Catholics. So Kosovo Liberation Army was a mixture of these two. Often, Serbia wanted to promote some kind of a religious war. We are fighting religious terrorists. But it was a problem when, for instance, one of the biggest massacres in Kosovo, the Meja massacre, 300 people were killed, most of them of Albanian Catholics. So some of that changed the narrative that initially Serbia was. So most were men, but there were 3% registered female or women combatants at the Kosovo Liberation Army. 20, 40 years old, 60% had their houses destroyed. Most had fought for 2 years. Some of the pictures from those combatants. Now, what happened between the two in terms of ending the war? In Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Washington Agreement was key. This is when the army of Bosnia and Herzegovina basically joined forces with the Croatian Republic of Herzegovina, or the Croatian Council, and they started fighting together the Serbian army. The NATO intervened for the first time in Bosnia, actually, in Operation Deliberate Force in '95. It started bombing Serb armed positions. And this led to Serbia coming to the negotiating table in US in an army base in Ohio. And the name of the agreement comes from that place, the Dayton Peace Agreement in 1995. This led to the creation of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, allocated 50% of the territory and 49% of the territory to the Serb Republic. Basically, DPA, it legitimized the existing reality in the ground. So how much territory both were controlling, that's how much they got. DPA was accepted by all sides. it ended the war, but it led to the negative peace. So not so sure it led to a sustainable solution as we see now. Part of that problem was the complicated power-sharing formulas and institutional setup in Bosnia. So you have the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina joining with Republika Srpska. Republika Srpska is very unified, very homogeneous entity, while within the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina you have a segregation of power around 10 cantons, and then 164 or so municipalities, each with different powers and always bickering about who is responsible for what. In Kosovo, key was the Rambouillet conference in France. Now you see the difference. On ending Kosovo war, the event took place in Europe, not in US. This was Europe trying to say we want to solve problems in our own territory. The difference is Rambouillet Accords was accepted by Kosovo side, Kosovo Albanians, but rejected by Serbia. This led to NATO's bombing against Serbia for 78 days. This was aerial campaign. After 78 days, we had the agreement signed in Macedonia, Kumanovo Agreement. And following this agreement, a day after, UN Security Council voted Resolution 1244 to end the conflict. So Resolution 1244 did place Kosovo under temporary international administration, but the resolution included a saying that at a certain time, the UN will lead a process to determine future status of Kosovo. So basically, Kosovo was statusless or international protectorate for some time. So more in terms of governance, more stable, but internationally, we are not consolidated. Bosnia is. Internally, Bosnia is not consolidated. We also have our challenges, but I think less than Bosnia, you can say. What is potential lessons from this process? International military intervention was vital to bring the parties to the table. NATO bombing led to DPA and to UN Security Council 1244. The more actors involved in the war, the more complicated the solutions to accommodate everyone. International presence, though, in both cases was key, vital to keep the peace. So it was not sufficient that just the two parties signed an agreement. You had to have some kind of international peacekeeping force present. Lessons for the EU, now that you see again a repetition, almost the same, Macron inviting Stamer to France for a summit after the statements from President Trump, similar situation in '98, St. Malo summit. This is when it led to the idea of having a common defense and security policy in the EU. But again, the EU unlearned many lessons that it had learned in the Balkans, especially vis-a-vis Ukraine, and key lesson was you cannot appease a dictator. Initial reaction to what was happening in the region from European community at the time was let's give Slobodan Milosevic a big economic package and a fast-track membership to European community. And that did not lead to any kind of solution. And we saw similar efforts, I guess, prior in these cases. After the war, in Bosnia, there was no clear DDR process. Much of it happened voluntarily from the soldiers. But there was anxiety, also from international community, but also from the people present there. So by mid-1996, for instance, of over 400,000 soldiers in Bosnia, 300,000 had already demobilized voluntarily themselves. However, they had no support or any kind of program to help that reintegration in the society. NATO, aspiration for NATO membership instituted another wave of demobilization in Bosnia and professionalization of the armed forces. Bosnia wants to join NATO and is part of Partnership for Peace program. And so right now, you had different waves of demobilization. The government offered to soldiers severance packages. So if you will leave the army, we will give you, for instance, in one case, there was some estimates about $10,000 or for junior officers, 3 months of pay, whatever that amount would be. In Kosovo, there was different, because in Bosnia, after the war, the process was how do we merge 3 different armies into one army? In Kosovo, it was about transitioning to a more institutional, formal military organization. And so in Kosovo, the process of DDR was something like this, in three separate or three categories. See, it's telling me I am done, so I will conclude. But just for those who are interested, so you had security, Kosovo Protection Corps came out of KLA, then you have Kosovo Police. All these were newly established institutions. We didn't have anything in Kosovo, so everything after 99 was built from scratch, institutional-wise. And you had private security companies. Two political parties emerged from the warring parties. As I said, unlike Bosnia, where you had the political leadership lead the war in Kosovo, and I know Gordan knows one of the guys in these pictures. Yeah. So the pictures there are showing moments when the agreements were signed for demobilization. The first one is the the KLA commander, who is there, and the political leader signing the agreement with NATO and UNMIK, Mr. Čeko, or General Čeko, that also fought in Croatian War. And the reintegration support for those who didn't fit to any of these. And just that we also had local approaches. Unlike Bosnia, in Kosovo we did a law that provides now some kind of financial support to former veterans. For instance, you will take a certain amount of salary monthly, but then you cannot work anywhere else if you wanna take that amount. Conclusions, sorry. What is the problem we have in the Balkans right now? And why Ukraine is also fighting for us? I think in Balkans we appreciate this as much. If Ukraine didn't happen, Bosnia was very close to happening. Problem is with this activeness and agency, right? There doesn't seem to be a push by neither US or EU to bring sustainable solutions to the problems we have in the region. Also, our main problem in the region is that you have a very active Russia. Problem, though, is that although Russia is very present in security sector, for instance, in Serbia and other sectors, you have now, as you can see from these headlines, France and Germany reapproaching Serbia because of access to lithium mines. This adds that element of that there will be less pressure now in Serbia, for instance, to normalize relations with Kosovo and stop support for Dodik in Bosnia and his secessionist movement. There is one potential positive development, and that is there are amazing protests from students right now happening in Serbia, and that they could change the game towards a more Western-oriented. And thank you to Ukraine as well. This is a picture from main square in Pristina, but as I said, we know what you're doing is not just for you, it is for all of us, and you should know all of us appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Ramadan. And our next and last speaker is Professor Ruth Diamint, who is professor at the Torquato di Tella University in Argentina and principal researcher at the National Council for Scientific and Technological Research, also in Argentina. And you also have 15 minutes. You can claim an extra 2 minutes to be fair, but
I don't try. I am the best, but not the last, but the least.
okay, sure.
And we moved from Europe to Caribbean region. Well, I started saying that I am very grateful for this invitation of the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies and the Strategic Studies Unit, and the possibility to learn so much about a region that I don't study, and we have a very good panels of experts. The case that I will be speaking is Cuba, and I am from Argentina, but I was making a research in Cuba for 6 years. I want to say that I imagine that the Cuban Air Forces that are not Air Forces very studies. Well, if you don't understand me, please stop me. But it's not exactly the case of a smaller state that has an innovation in the sense that this conference tried to show. They have innovation, but in an other different, very different style. One of the questions that Omar posed to me, and I tried to research a little more on that, is why U.S. never invade Cuba. And Cuba can survive the sanctions and aggressions and defending the special regime that they have, but the reality is there in a way some consensus that U.S. never will invade Cuba. John F. Kennedy, the president in 1961, expressed, and I quote, that the United States intend no military intervention in Cuba. And he added, I also repeat his words, we made it repeatedly clear that the armed forces on this country will not intervene in any way. These words come after the invasion of Cuba in the Bay of Pigs, or in the name of Cuban words, Playa Girón. Bay of Pigs is not a good translation also. Bahía de los Cochinos, I don't know how to translate, it's stronger. But this invasion was made by Cuban against Castro regime. CIA trained these people, but there wasn't American soldiers involved in this situation. After the missile crisis in 1962, exactly in October 16, 1962, Kennedy's brother, Robert Kennedy, serving as Attorney General, met secretly with Soviet ambassador to the US, Anatoly Dobrygin. Robert Kennedy assured him that the United States would guarantee to never invade Cuba. The Cuban leaders, in the other side, were convinced that the US do not react to Cuba due to the tragic experience in the Vietnam War. Also, US lacks regional support to intervene in the small Cuban island. And the reality was that the Americans applied a series of actions to defeat the revolution, but there were not a military intervention in Cuba. In the times of the revolution, the legend of the revolutionary Cuba as invincibility army grew a lot, and also it subordinated the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the Revolutionary Armed Forces, in Spanish is FAR, and I will explain in other moments of my presentation that the FAR, because it's shorter than to say Revolutionary Armed Forces. And the Minister of Defense, that was Raúl Castro from the beginning of the revolution, the brother of Fidel Castro, predicted a strong military reaction to any attack, regardless the cost of lives. This argument convinced Cuban authorities that the United States would not make any effort to counter Fidel Castro government. Why I say that the FARC are so powerful? And I have 2 points. First, taking into account the considering interest and objective of this conference, is little known about the FARC budget or number of members comprised on that, also weaponry. Second, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Cuba are the most influential and powerful official institution of the island. Although the military is very present in society, they belong to an invisibilized institution. In Cuba, 2 major sectors have the capacity to guide the dry politics of the island: the bureaucrats of the Communist Party of Cuba, the PCC, on one hand, and the officials of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Cuba in the other. The high-level Cuban administration and officers with effective decision-making power have been selected from these two groups. The military leaders allied with the government scrutinize every word and every movement of the subordinate. In general, there are a lot of control, but more control over the armed forces. Why I say that this is a case of militarization? Militarization implies the dimension of an external threat. That is why the Cuban regime always maintained the risk of a military intervention of the US forces. Their argument was never disappear in the governmental and followers of the cost for the Cuban economy of the blockade the Cuban said blockade, the American said embargo, in Cuba for the development of the country. But militarization, in the Oli Weaver words, is a case of securitization. That means transforming non-traditional and non-military issues into security threat to justify exceptional Cuban domestic measures. And the reality is that Cuba militarized the economy. How the FARC became so important? The FARC worked under the law 1129 on November 26 of 1963, enacted the compulsory military service for men between 17 and 28 years for a period of 3 years, extending the obligation to be a reserve until the age of 45. Mobilization remains the same in the 66 years of the revolutionary government. From 1963, they began the overseas campaign, shifting the defensive doctrine toward the internationalist stance to support regime with socialist and anti-colonialist orientations. The professionalization and experience in Africa imparted an enormous sense of pride within and for the armed forces. Military doctrine comes in the sense of two sources. First, the internationalist doctrine that has the goal to expand socialism around the world, and second, the notion of a people in arms that was an effective way to include citizens in the revolution needs. But this idea of the people in arms that also was expanded to other countries in Latin America is not something that are follow or the young generation believe because they only have the bad effects of the revolution. The main military alliance that the FARC has was established in 1961 with the Soviet Union according to the provisions of the Warsaw Pact. But the Republic of Cuba never was part of the Pact of the Warsaw. It never was a member country. Recently, some years ago, Cuba formed an alliance with North Korea for a partial modernization of its military equipment after the fall of the Soviet Union. But observing the alliance, no senior Iranian official has ever visited Cuba. From November 24 to 26, 2022, President of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, visited Cuba. He signed a joint declaration with the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party and President of the Republic of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, with the aim of promoting cooperation in all the spheres. The declaration does not contain any reference to the military issue. In the past, large numbers of young Latin Americans received guerrilla warfare training on Cuba, but and they were given in general by the FARC instructor, but now they are not influenced of Cuban expertise in Latin American people. The Cuban impact in regional politics came close to zero. At the beginning of the revolution government, the regular military was around 82,000 armed men. The current number is a mystery. Some people said 65,000, the others say that it's near 40,000, but we have not any information. And the last known, because maybe there are others that I don't know, but the last maneuvers military were the Bastion exercise due in 2016, that means 8 years ago. What is in real doing the military in Cuba? The military had to demonstrate that they were an instrument of the revolution. They have a social utility. The role is innovative, but not in the sense that the proposal of this conference. Toward the 90s, it began an economic transformation which, according to the official discourse, aimed to supply the FARC without creating a burden on the government that was undergoing a second special period of limitation of the economy. Cuba's special peacetime period was a long phase of the economic crisis that began as a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. To be a triumphant army in the participation in Africa, they became the military entrepreneurs. In the mid-80s, high-ranking officials were required to adhere to the Business Improvement System, SPE, to manage the resources used by the force more efficiently. From this professional modification emerged the Gaviota Group, a large vertically integrated tourism conglomerate. But the creator or the architect of this transformation in economic enterprise was López Calleja, Luis Alberto Rodríguez López Calleja. He was a general. He was the son of a general that was working with the Castro brothers. He was married, and after divorce, for Deborah Castro, the daughter of Raúl Castro. And he created a lot of enterprise in Panama, in Bahamas, Virgin Islands, to manage this new economic enterprise and in a way to support the blockade of the US. The last military acquisitions that we can recognize in Cuba come from the Soviet Union in 1983 and in 1988. That means a long time ago. Regarding the doctrine, the strategic guideline that guides its action on the 20th century was a deterioration in professional conduct, especially because the command focused on his business role and is associated to high level of corruption. The Cuban exile Luis Dominguez from the Cuban Human Rights Foundation, an expert in Cuban defense, said that the government manipulated the idea that Cuba has a spectacular and well-equipped armed forces, but it's a myth. The current alliance do not provide weapons. The alliance with Venezuela provides the government with oil at reduced prices. In exchange, Cuba offers intelligence service made out of military personnel of Cuba and considered the best product of the Cuban Revolution. Something similar what Inbom tell about North Korea today. Fidel Castro imposed that the military personnel and soldiers serve by the socialist homeland or death, and they changed the profile because the people who was part of the FAR of the armed forces was people who belonged to the revolution, and the new generation was chosen not by merit but affinity with the regime. But finally, this scenario made clearer that Cuba is no longer a military power. The capitalist sphere has become the main fortress of the revolutionary armed forces. The defense of the system has evolved from military territorial defense to commercial operation and economic survival. There is not military strategy, but a strategy for the regime's survival. And I want to finish my presentation with some words of the President Díaz-Canel. He said, and I quote, "The Revolutionary Armed Forces have become the most disciplined and efficient body of the state administration. The business system of the FARC has achieved remarkable results that contribute to the country's economy. But this is not a military institution." Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a few minutes for questions, and then we will give our speakers the chance to respond, and then we'll invite you all to go to lunch before it gets cold. So shall we take a few questions? Yes, sir.
Dr. Jordan, Dr. Zoran.
You have mentioned in your presentation so you have mentioned through your presentations that during crises and wars the issue of internal loyalties and identity emerges. Dr. Zoran, you have mentioned a number of people who moved from Croatia to the enemy side. So my question to you, does this mean that Croatia faced an issue related to identity and loyalty? Are there reasons for this transformation from moving from the side of the country to the enemy? Do you believe that citizenship and identity is crucial during wars and crises and conflicts, and countries must rethink the issue of identity and citizenship and ethical loyalties? And my question to Dr. Zoran, it seems that a number of countries have not taken notice of the issues of identity and loyalties during wars, and this could create, as you have said, insurgency and civil wars. Those people who lived in the country and they are citizens of that country, however, they rose against. Is there an issue related to loyalties inside these countries? Also, we need to not forget a very important issue in the future. Please limit yourself to 2 questions. Any other questions from the audience?
Thank you. Since we're on the issue of identities, I think it really is interesting and important. Both the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia attempted to create, over their history, a civic identity and sort of have their peoples cast off the ethnic or national identities. Both failed. And when they broke apart along ethnic or national lines. But civic identities exist throughout the world. There are plenty of countries that have them. So what was it about the Soviet and Yugoslav experience that made it impossible for them to overcome the national identities and create a civic identity? Thank you.
Perfect. Another question on identities. This part, we'll take the gentleman here, and then it's Omar, please. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for a wonderful presentation today. I would like to ask a question to Dr. Akrap. So in your presentation, you talk about the successful transformation of intelligence system from totalitarian to democratic. So I well know from South Korean history, it is very difficult to transform the intelligence organization successfully. So I would like to ask, how could Croatia successfully transform the intelligence system, or how could Croatia establish the democratic control of our intelligence system?
Okay, and the last
Thank you.
question is from
Thanks.
Omar.
Fascinating panel, as always, and we saved the great panel also for the last. Just 3 brief questions. One to Zoran. So you took part in the negotiation of the agreement, at least in some form or another, in over the agreement 2001, and it was fascinating in a sense that you limited the expansion of the civil war, or the insurgency, and avoided a full-fledged civil war. But at the same time, you had many of the leaders of the insurgency became ministers of defense, speakers in the parliament, parliamentarians, and so on. So you had to give something in return. So if you can shed some, how do you assess this, number one? And if you can give some lessons learned, because at some point Luhansk and Donetsk and Zaporizhia and Kherson will be liberated, and Ukraine may deal also with some challenges there because of that. Gordan, can you please tell us what you are doing in this picture? Because in terms of involvement in Kosovo, so that Ramadan has, if it's not classified and Ramadan has not exposed you too much. Okay. And Ruth, just one question on the, so basically Cuba was really punching above its weight. As a relatively small state, its main strategic adversary is 90 miles away. They are conducting large-scale military operations across the Atlantic in Africa. In Angola, Quito Carnevale was like one of the largest military battles since World War II in Africa. They led it. I read the accounts of South African pilots. They had nothing but respect for the Cuban pilots, which I respect that the Israelis have never had for the Egyptian pilots or the Syrian pilots. They had just respect for the air defense folks. So they were performing quite significantly, training insurgents training fighters and soldiers in Yemen, participating in Ethiopia, trying to topple governments everywhere in Latin America, succeeded in Nicaragua. So basically a small, relatively small island, but a very high political and military impact, making peace and war. So what happened between then, and it's not just the Soviet Union, probably more than that. So what happened for your conclusion? Thank you.
And the last one.
Thank you very much. My question is to Professor Gordan. We two come from different backgrounds. You are a military person. I am more focused on international relations, geopolitical analysis. What you talked about Croatia's war, it was more primarily military perspective. But my question is about its larger geopolitical and international relations dynamics. Yesterday, you told me that many countries were against Croatia at that time. The international situation was not so much favorable. I would like to ask you to elaborate on this. How international situation was not favorable, how you managed this situation and turned the overall situation in your favor. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. My colleagues reminded me that there will be concluding remarks before lunch. Sorry to keep you waiting if you're hungry.
Okay, I'll combine this last question with this question of legality. So very clearly, this negotiation part has two dimensions, political and security. So answering to your questions, so we did have some participation until we prepare the context of the negotiations. But as soon as politics takes over, we were excluded. So I cannot say what was behind doors in the politics in that time, but what I know that the pressure was very high from the international community because they wanted to stop the conflict and any other form of war, conflict, or any kind of escalation between that. Why? Because they finally solved the Bosnia issue, the bloody breakup of Yugoslavia, they solved the Kosovo, and now Macedonia was like, they was very, very tired from the Balkans. So that was different setup. So this is how I can explain, in the most simple words. And about the legality, it's illegal. It was illegal. Why? Because even with that constitutions that we have before, we changed it after the Ohrid Framework Agreement, which is part of the constitutions, we have countered the minority rights inside the country. So it was all by the law, but the context itself, which was in the Balkans, so and these ethnic frictions within the state, it might end up on the side of insurgency. It might end up on a different in a different pathway. So for our case, they decided to follow the Kosovo example. But the real problem was that the setup in Macedonia in 2001 was not the same setup 1997, 8, and 99 as a start of the Kosovo war. So it was kind of different political context, different security context, and that's why we have the full rights within a few months, like around 4 months, to settle these terrorist and criminal issues that we have. And suddenly, after those 4 months, they turn out to be insurgents. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I will try to be fast on the first 5 questions. First, I would like to congratulate and express my deepest gratitude to Omar and to your team again for everything what you have done. Second, we have here our ambassador, Drago Lovric, and he is deputy. This is one of the answer on your question. Ambassador Lovric, he is not just an ambassador. He is a war 4-star general. He joined the Croatian army. So The way how we developed and defend our country was to unite, to integrate. There was no revenge was forbidden, despite the fact that there was a different political fractions within the Croatia, within the history. But President Tuđman said, no, it's time to be united because we know the strategic goal, to defend and to make Croatia again, to re-establish re-independence. Ramadan, if I may add something to your papers, I know that it was a history of Bosnia and Herzegovina is very challenging, but there was one paper that you are missing. It was a Tuđman-Izetbegović agreement from June, July 95, signed in the city of 95, Split. It was a ordinary agreement between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia in order to cooperate, to fully support, but has a secret annex. Secret annex, we published it in our journal, said full military cooperation and intelligence cooperation between Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina in order to liberate occupied areas of Bosnia and Herzegovina and to liberate the Bihać pocket area and to prevent repetition of the Srebrenica genocide over the Bosnian Muslims. That's what it was one of the most important documents that we did. We asked for this document for years. And President Izetbegović, when he was finally forced with a strategic defeat by the Serbs, came to us and said, let's sign it. We signed it, we did it, we liberated. Another, identity matters. Identity, emotions are driving force, but decisions has to be made by ratio, by decision-making process without influence of emotions, only upon the real valuable strategic intelligence support. We have to win the war. We can lose, we can allow us to lose some battles, but the final target is to win the war. As lower as we can have a casualties and destruction on all sides. And that was a driving force for us. We ran our war, homeland war for independence, with motivation, with our emotions, but we brought decisions without emotional influence. And that helped very much. We were faced with support of the former Yugoslavian military officers who were Croats by ethnicity when they realized that Yugoslav army attacked Slovenia and then Croatia. They said, yes, we are officers of the Yugoslav army, but we are ethnically Croats. We were not trained to be part of this army. They joined us, and we welcomed them. I was not a trained officer. I was a member of some kind of the special forces when I was in Yugoslav army, but I was not trained to be an officer. I was not trained to be an intelligence officer, but you have to learn, you have to adapt, you have to be agile in order to win. So, United States, Soviet Union, this disappeared on the political scene just like in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was a brutal, because the communist mentality prevent to solve the open interethnical questions. We can speak about it many days, about it, how it was done. From outside, it looked like Yugoslavia is a perfect society, but inside it was a boiling pot. Boiling pot, and it showed us later in the case of Kosovo, in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in the case of North Macedonia. How we transfer and transform our intelligence. First, it was a natural, let's say, cleaning, because many of those who didn't want to accept Croatia as a state, they left. Some of them, as I said, we arrested because they continued to work as agents and spies for the Serbs and Yugoslavian army. And then we choose. We have a very rigorous process. Who is able to join us? Mostly the people who were part of the volunteer forces and the armed forces, who were shown themselves as patriots in a very tough times. And we learned them, we trained them, we educate them. I was part of those also. I was invited to join intelligence. Suddenly, I was not expected to do that. And then I grew up within the structure. Then we built up from defense position to offensive, because we knew if we want to win, we have to be active. That's what I said. We created the trends. We created the narratives. We created the tempo. We reached the position, information, and kinetic superiority in 2 years' time by ourselves. We have the support and by some friends, advisors, but mainly 99% we did it by ourselves. From the weapons acquired to organization, to identity matters, to motivation, to planning, everything. For example, this Operation Storm that I showed you, the strategic plan was written in end of '93. accepted by the president and Minister of Defense at the time. 16 months, we trained, equipped, and organized our military units and intelligence to prepare this 4-day operation. 16 months. Now, we have 5 levels of the Intelligence Oversight Committee. We have a Parliamentary Oversight Committee, professional oversight within the intelligence agencies, officially oversight within the Office of the National Security, media, court case, and the Civil Oversight Committee that I'm part of. So we have a very, very organizational country. And larger geopolitical perspective. In 1990, we didn't have friends. We didn't have allies. We have few partners. I will say it in 1 minute. It was the time of the breakup of the Berlin Wall. It was a major shift on international geopolitical scene. Germany was not our friend, not our partner, despite everything what you hear. Germany decided in October 1990 to decide, yes, it's time to recognize Croatia and Slovenia because Serbia decided in 91, October 91. It was already full-scale war against us because of the terrible destruction of the city of Vukovar, city of Gospić, and city of Dubrovnik that were committed by the Serbian side, Yugoslavian side, with a huge amount of disinformation that were placed in international public. I didn't mention disinformation activities, but we fought them. And there was a huge amount of disinformation that Serbian side and Yugoslavian side want to say Croatian new government is a neo-Nazi state. But we were very sufficient. We find the instruments how to do it. So it's a very, very significant global perspective that was happening at that time. Germany reunification. You remember the GDR. Germany was faced with British and France, let's say disapproval, let's be very mild, in order to reintegrate East Germany within the German constitutional system. And that you expect that Germany will support us, secession of the Yugoslavia and violent breakup, in order to do it. We were very happy and lucky because there was a few smart guys, including the Judge Badinter, and few other judges said, yes, there is a reason, and Yugoslavia should cease to exist because they don't have any more legal aspect to exist. So briefly, I've ended.
Thank you very much. Next is
Telegraphic way. And I think that one thing that can explain is in the first 20, 25 years, the Soviet Union was trying to support the Cuban Revolution and create a sense of to be a powerful country. And as Gordan said, identity or beliefs or emotions are very driving forces. They create the sense to be a triumphant revolution. But after, China and Vietnam became capitalist, and Cuba can manage the capitalist situation because they are a very small and controlled society. And that also makes that people, I remember a young person who told me, if my parents understand that the revolution failed, their life failed because they were sacrificed by the revolution. And this is the feeling of how emotion feels identity. And another thing that you need to consider is Raúl is not Fidel. A lot of the changes in the economic was managed by Raúl, and Raúl has a very different thinking about politics, about the reality, than Fidel. He opened the economy after he closed, but in a moment he opened the economy because he has another sense. The changes in international relations make changes in the objectives of the Cuban Revolution.
perfect. Do you have any?
Maybe with Dr. Ashur's question, in 2000, the Swedish Prime Minister at the time created an international commission of experts to determine why the war in Kosovo happened. And they issued their report. They had their concluding seminar in South Africa, so Nelson Mandela has a very nice foreword to this report. But they dealt with the larger question why Yugoslavia collapsed. And I would just point to that report as a very good source of understanding how these, but you're right, the slogan during that time was brotherhood and unity. But very quickly, I would say two things. For instance, we are a weird region in a way when you look at us, because every single country in Western Balkans says they are for European integration, membership. And this means disbanding borders at a certain point. This means freedom of movement of people. This means your passport having European Union before your... But at the same time, each is working as much as possible through this nationalistic understanding. So this exceptionalism is an issue in Kosovo, and it serves problems. I have a problem as Albanian because a Serb is learning in his own language in the school. We are afraid of granting more rights to people, and when you think the right to learn in your own language in a school for a minority community is a right recognized since World War I. You're not innovating something. So I think it's about this cultural idea, this fear we have, because we are giving rights, we are reducing our own rights. And last point, sorry, there is that tension in Balkans between justice and peace. We never did reconciliation after the brutal wars happened. Some people want justice, but the option that was chosen was peace. So we never dealt truly with reconciliation. And right now we do not have, unfortunately, leaders that want reconciliation.
Yeah, sometimes forgetting is good in itself. Gordan asked for just 30 seconds, really, and
yes,
then we have to conclude this
session. To answer your
session.
question, the man on the photo is a friend of mine. When Serbia attacked Kosovo in 1998, 1999, there was some number of the Kosovo Albanians who were part of the Croatian army. And there was a pressure and question to the Minister of Defense. Well, Mr. Minister, and he said, yes, you can fully retire, and then you can go wherever you want. On the picture, this photo, you can see the General Brigadier General Agim Ceku, that he left the Croatian army, he joined the UČK, he became a commander of UČK, and at this photo, you can see in the rank that is a Croatian rank, not the UČK rank. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank our great speakers for these fascinating talks and ask you all to thank them for their contributions to this conference. And just before you leave, we will leave the podium, but I'll ask Omar to make some final concluding remarks. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for being with us here. I just have very, very brief final remarks to thank you all. I will speak in Arabic, so please put on your headphones if you need it. There are quite a few here. If you don't have, yeah, I'll just give a quick chance for the ones who don't have it, or.
إذن كانت جلسة نقاشية رائعة ختمنا فيها مؤتمرنا، وشكرا جوردن على تذكيرنا بكلمة الاختتام. إذن سنختم هذا المؤتمر وتحول للحديث باللغة العربية. Colleagues, friends, students, males and females, followers on social media, thanks and gratitude to you all, and I'll present my concluding remarks in the Strategic Studies Unit 5th Annual Conference, Defense Strategies of Small States and Smaller Forces, Tactical Adaptations and Operational Innovations. In this conference, we have discussed more than 30 case studies, small countries and smaller forces, and the various defense strategies that includes a number of operational innovations and tactical adaptations during the 3 days of this conference through 10 panel sessions. And you have followed in these 10 sessions 30 interventions and research papers that we have honored to be presented by 36 leading researchers and experts. I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to those researchers and experts and express my great gratitude for their research, and we will continue, we'll keep in contact with them because we are embarking on a number of research projects. A book that will entitle The Defense of Small Countries, Strategic Transformations, and in addition to a number of strategic papers that is published by the Arab Center. And I would like to extend my thanks to the Arab Centers, Dr. Azmi Bshara, Dr. Muhammad Al-Masri, and all my colleagues in the center and the institute who have moderated the different sessions, especially Dr. Abdul Wahab Al-Afandi, the director of the Doha Institute for Higher Education. And also I'd like to extend my thanks to Mr. Majd Abu Amir, who exerted huge efforts as a researcher and an organizer in this conference. For his valuable contributions in this conference and the previous conferences. Also, I would like to thank the organizational committee for their logistic efforts. Mr. Mu'taz Al-Nadhr, Nagam Al-Aqad, Ahmed Hussein, and also Mr. Sohail Jilawi and Faisal Soli, and our colleagues in the video and photographers, the technicians. Also, thanks and gratitude to the interpreters, Ms. Hazna Barqoni, Mr. Muwaffaq Tawfiq, Mr. Samir Karoum, Mr. Hassan Rabai'a, and Mr. Yasin Saleh. And finally, I would like to thank all those who followed us on social media platforms. And we will direct the questions that has been sent to the researchers and the participants in this conference. And in terms of the outcomes and the recommendations of this conference, they will be included in the book as well as the papers. And we will continue communications and discussions of the topics and the themes of this conference in future events. I leave you with the blessing and of Allah, and I invite you to the lunch in the restaurant. Thank you very much for your kind attention.